So, I'd actually done this earlier. Kind of want to show off. So, I have two scores up there, which are basically just perfects. They're not like super optimized in terms of scoring, but I wanted to illustrate a point, which is that what you're seeing in the game when I put up a Mania Perfect or whatnot is like hours upon hours of attempts. And I wanted to show whether that scales down. Had my footage saved, that answer would have been no. It still is. It's just kind of a pain I have to do this again. But typically, the issues I run into with basically playing for score, at least with Axel, but the same holds true for like every other character. Like you'll see just now, Randupper got stuff. That's actually a good thing. So you'll see just now that I dropped my chain, and if you're Axel, you basically have to play the stage memorized. I call it, in the comments, I mentioned that this game has the design of a shmup. But specifically that type of shoot 'em up, which is an old kind of shooter that features like flying ships, if you're young, you'd want to look up games like R-Type, R-Type. And what R-Type is notorious for, not in a negative way, but what it's known for is being a memorizer, where you memorize stage layouts and then you perform the stage based on how it will consistently play out each and every time. Now, I was in like a Twitch channel earlier this morning. If this were Mania, I would have been messed up for doing that. But thankfully, enemies are... their aggression only seems to turn on, like, infrequently. See if I... okay, covered in time. So they said that, well... I've heard things like Axel is a scrub character, but he's not good enough for scrubs. I would not refer to beginners that way, and that it's kind of dumb because it's just the argument I heard where I still have to speak the language of sorts, is that, well, the beginner wants like a certain level of entry, difficulty-wise. And so Axel is and isn't that character. Like somehow the guy on the cover of the game, and this is not unique to Streets of Rage 4. It seems to be something that happens with a lot of modern games, particularly fighting games I've played. Anyway, it's not really the point. Like, I just heard a disparaging comment about how only, like somehow only experts can play Axel, but not an expert character. So I just wanted to show what a perfect attempt looks like. So, that right there, I wasn't distracted. I actually clinched that enemy, and I hit attack once. I don't tend to mash my inputs because it's bad. The throw didn't buffer. And so, Donovan, with his really good movement speed, usually every enemy in this game has better movement speed than the player, he got in there, and he hit me with most people, like, I remember joking that it's a 1-frame jab. It's actually 7 frames. But the reason it seems so fast is that all enemies move faster than the player. That time was my fault. I was trying to charge kick, and I didn't get the 4th hit to come out. It didn't buffer. No, I don't even know if I would say it was my fault. But I don't get contradictory talking points like that, because it's just like, which is it? Is he an expert character, or is he not? Is he for scrubs, or is he not? You know, scrubs, quote unquote. Woo. Roll. And that was actually really dangerous what I just did. But working out. So enemies have such strong movement. Like, look at that. The knife we're gonna ignore. That's like a meme. I don't care about the knife. It's the movement. Like, the hitboxes are one thing, but look how quickly enemies move into place. It's something that most people wouldn't perceive. Like if you're just playing this game, you're not trying to be married to Streets of Rage 4. Like, I'm sorry. So balancing the difficulty around, like, going like, well, it should be challenging, or this is our vision, that's a huge assumption about, like, how much time every individual player has to give to this game. So much so that, like, okay, I'm not saying that you don't deserve to get hit, or that you should never get hit. It's that, within a certain affordance, this game is merciless. But the reasoning for it just seems extremely arrogant to me. Because it's like, oh, well, you should have nothing good. It should, like, everything should play out as I designed. And there's nothing busted, there's nothing remotely erring on the side of the player. Like, right now, enemies are shimmying me because they're reading me doing defensive blitz. But you see them walking in these, like, oblong arcs where the player just can't really contest it. So it's not merely that you move slow. Like, it's not that, like, when I'm trying to get across this part of the screen, like, Axel's just slow. You know, and I would have my chain otherwise. It's so many other situations where enemies dictate the pace, the flow of the game. And that's not always a problem, but it's not, like, infrequent. It is all the time. Like, there, Donovan decides that he wants to gingerly walk up to me. And it's like, I have to hold that. And it's like, when have I not? When they're, like, there. Like, I'm waiting for Garcia to get into place because Axel is slow. And so, when he gets into place, his jab is actually really slow, but it isn't merely, like, whether, like, it was a technical mistake, like, was that my fault? You have to realize that, you have to see that most players are putting in multiple attempts. For people that are like, well, this is like it's like a fighting game, but it's also an action game, which is dumb because fighting games are action games. You can, a strategy in any competitive, like, venture, like there, like I'm looking at this thing juking me and I'm not sure if he's trying to move into place. Mental fatigue does set in. Like, it's called threading the needle. Like, that was the first time I read about it, and it was from a Blanca player. But even then, like, MMA, like, if you're just a normal-ass person, thank God, like, don't be like me, like, trying to bleed the stone here. I just like games and studying them, like, the design. And yeah, I'm, like, waiting for her to get into position. Point proven. You can just basically tire out somebody, like, you just weather the storm. So here, this is another instance where it's like, I'm locked into hit stop. And I'm just waiting for the enemy to give me the chance to, like, have a turn. Now, the problem with this is that, like, that's not unique to, like, Streets of Rage 4. It's not. Like, the action game genre is, like, the most fundamental action. Point of gameplay is get out of way, take turn. Enemy does something, you dodge, you get your turn. Like, not a particularly hard concept. Like, that right there, I was not expecting him to vault. I was actually trying to jump. So, like, I picked that up, thankfully. So the other thing I want people to notice is that not once in most of these attempts have I just done grand upper, like, with enemies on screen. But with, unfortunately, I really wish I didn't have to go back and record as Blaze. When I was playing as Blaze, I'm just constantly doing her special moves. And I feel like the fact that Axel's, like, offensive blitz is just unsafe is a testament to, like, the flaw of this game's design. But you don't necessarily have to agree with that. Kind of perplexed at why, like, those shields have way too much HP. Hey, buddy. They're not dead. So the player will get just flanked. Like, even that, like, Barney, like, visually is like, I don't really know where to begin. Because even characters, like, that are fat, or, like, you could quote the developer as saying, like, in that Reddit Ask Me Anything, I went through some of the posts. He's like, we didn't want to trivialize, what was it? We didn't want to trivialize character movement speed. And I'm like, when does that ever apply to enemies? Like, even the fattest enemy, like, even the, like, most visually overweight or rotund enemy outmaneuvers, like, all these people who supposedly, like, dedicate themselves to fighting or blah, blah, blah. This isn't necessarily about lore to me in terms of, like, it shouldn't contradict the story. It's more that, incidental to that, although I do think, like, I happen to have a soft spot for narrative and, like, design in games. It's more that, what are you trying to convey to the player there? Although I get that this is a fantasy. Like, at some point, like, what you're seeing, like, how does it inform, like, what the player is doing? Now, unless, like, it's quite possible that this will fuck up and, like, I'll get slid at. But we'll see. Shouldn't have clinched, should have just defensive special. So I try to use throws for invincibility, and I got slid at, that's what I thought would happen. But at some point, like, what you're doing should inform, like, how you're experiencing the game and what you're seeing. It's not just about, like, well, the plot. Like, I don't really care about that. It's that enemies, so, like, the rationale, rather, of seeing someone say, like, well, I want the big character to move slowly because it's a valid decision. Something. And I'm like, well, you didn't apply that logic to the enemies, evidently. Like, even the fattest character outmaneuvers, like, because they can literally sometimes dash. So it just seems like a lot of contradictions, which do happen. But it seems like a lot of contradictions at the expense of the player, but the rationale is flawed. Like, the reasoning behind it is just kind of questionable or dubious. Like, I want Floyd to be a slow character, not, like, it would be homogenous, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you failed at that. Shit. Like, right there, I did Axel's, like, rush attack or whatever, his rush punch. Any special other than, like, defensive blitz would be unsafe. That's the other perplexing thing. Like, offensive specials are bad. So your most frequently used special, like, runs on a battery. So this is going back into the point about applying, like, a certain type of logic to enemies where it contradicts the limitations that the players have. So it makes you constantly have to question, like, this game's balance of, like, enemy behavior and player, I guess, player character properties. Like, why do I move slow if Big Ben is gonna fucking roll? Like, why do I move slower? Why don't I get a run? If every enemy in the game ostensibly has, like, some abstract or literal run. I feel like it doesn't hold up to scrutiny, and not just feel, like, it just doesn't. But that's circular, like, I get it. It doesn't hold up to scrutiny because, like, you can just find, like, countless evidence. Man, that 4th hit combo is just gonna cost me. Find countless, like, there, the Garcia comes in, like, he moved in so fast, like, his legs had to, like, screech to, like, a sort of cartoonish halt. Like, he's pumping the brakes. So the question becomes, why not the player? And the answer was like, well, movement speed. Like, we didn't want to trivialize, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if you do that and then enemies constantly dictate the flow of the fight, then I really think it makes it questionable. Like, strategically, and then in terms of flow, like, what you're doing to the player as a result. This is one of the few cool manipulations a game has, like, against Barney. Like, you can just make him being like a baby for his taser. I actually really like that. I think the other, if I don't want to search for it, yeah, the other taser's here. Bamza. So, like, whether you're going to give the player a run or blah blah blah, it is, like, evident to me that the player moves too slowly relative to every single enemy. Like, okay, some enemies will outpace you, but even, it's not just the walk speed, it's also the fact that enemies are moving quickly in ways that even when you give, like, players a run. I don't want to deal with Zambra. Even when you give players a run, the player only moves left and right. They only move horizontally. On the Z-axis or whatnot, enemies can just literally run up and down. They can run diagonally. Like, they literally run circles around you, or at least half circles around you. Now, what I'm frustrated with is you missed about, like, the 45 minutes to an hour's worth of attempts that I made to show that there's also just, like, a lack of consistency. Like, you would think that, yeah, I fucking perfected I perfected blah blah blah, like, stage 6 Chinatown. I'm like, at the end of the day, like, it kind of sucks that I have to just say, like, yeah, but that was luck. I got lucky. I got the right pattern, the right enemies didn't, like, bot me. There was some skill involved, but it's like, it wasn't enjoyable. There's this myriad of things where I just want to say, yeah, but I did this, but. So you go through all of that, because you still saw me reset the game prior to this. And all those resets basically are where the game's difficulty lies. Like, when you get to the boss, it's supposed to capstone, like, being outmaneuvered and whatnot, but bosses are actually, like, they're the same concept spread across, like, the entire game. Moves faster than you, has super armor. You basically have to, like, move up and down the Z-axis, like the vertical space of the game, get them to whiff something, and then you take your turn. Barring, like, exceptions like BJK Washi or whatever. Backup requested.
Backup requested. Backup requested.
Gonna away the perfect. So I did want to experiment there. I did that, not to style, but I wanted to show something. If I don't do the infinite, what I am subjecting myself to all at once is a penalty where all of that boss's like cycles occur. And then you see that like by the end of it, the penalty for doing the penalty for messing up the infinite is pretty severe. So if you want to just talk about balance in like a singular context there, it's like that's not easy. Like I'm not just doing infinites and then it's just like, oh, like there's nothing stopping me. Like if you notice, I did what I did to also try to pick up the score items to like illustrate a point. Infinites won't even get you the highest score. And there's Donovan, like basically moving quickly. Like again, I want these things to be seen. I want to point them out. Enemy movement is degenerate in this game, and that doesn't just mean that you're an anime pervert or whatever. If you happen to like that word as a meme, like strategically it's bankrupt because you can just get checkmated by enemies. They'll, like we've already seen, like I've mashed on defensive special. Enemies read that input. And that's not necessarily the worst thing, but every single enemy, like even the dumbest enemy reads it. And while I could do the flavor of like, well, you see the Garcias like training in Chinatown, I'm resetting here because I also want to show that like, say you're trying to get a high score. That combo meter, it's like, again, the enemies dictate the flow of the game. So I have to memorize like how exactly I beat like these foes. Like I have to memorize how any given encounter transitions into the next screen to a fault because of the score indicator. And it's full of contradictions that aren't remotely interesting. Like the contradiction itself, it's not because it's a contradiction that I think it's a problem. It's that what the contradiction reveals is something dumb. Where it's like the justification that's being made is itself circular or contradictory. It's like, well, I don't want enemies to like be trivialized by like, I don't know, fucking Floyd like flying all over the place. But there are plenty of games where like there's like universal dashes, like characters have like something akin to a dash. Like Alien vs Predator, Schaefer the Fourth isn't like, he's the grappler in that game. He's not broken. He's actually the weakest enemy, or the weakest character in the game relative to enemies. So it's not as if like giving Floyd a dash is checkmate in and of itself. I feel like it shows a lack of imagination. It's not even a feeling, it is a lack of imagination. Your only invincible move is this. And so, as if that weren't problem enough, you then start getting into the fact that earlier I did Grand Upper, and it just gets jacked. And I know that the developer, like, quote-unquote, is fixing Axel, but I'm not concerned with, like, a lot of these issues aren't merely, like, about, like, how fast you move. Because it's like, okay, say I move faster. Blaze still has these problems. There you go. And I missed that. I'm not going to take fault for the way that misses. It's like, I think it illustrates a point. I want it to be understood. The inconsistencies of this game come from the fact that the design of it is absolutely about like siding with the computer, siding with the game opposition that the player faces to a fault. And the one time, like the one point of that's incidental, where like the game has to surrender like some sort of advantage to the player is infinites. And that's like the first thing people are like, yeah, the game is good, just remove the infinites. That is the dumbest. That is the dumbest thing. That is one of the stupidest things that I could hear you want to address as a developer in a game like this. And Why? Because look at everything that has happened up to the point where I'm talking right now. Where the enemy dictates the flow. Like, the one advantage that the player has, the one point of consistency, you want to take that away, what are you going to replace it with? So all these, like, streams that kind of demo, balance patch, blah, 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 they don't address movement. I see these, like, influencers or whatever just getting jabbed in the back of the head. Like, I tried to back throw there. It doesn't even matter that I get hit. I'm not actually, like, life or death trying to get the perfect. I've done it already. But I want to illustrate that even, like, I've perfected 2/3 of the game. Do I think that this game is too hard? Yes. But it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do with character balance. Making a worse Adam will not give, like, it's not going to make a better Axel. And even if you make a better Axel, like, if you remove his tools, like, are you really addressing a lot of the issues that I think stymie the flow? Like, look at what BT did just now. Like, he kind of just walked in a U ellipses. I can't, like, let me try to do that to an enemy. I'm just gonna, like, walk in on, like, Garnet. Oh, no. I got drop kicked. Like, you can't move like that as a player. So the fact that enemies just have, like, it isn't merely running, but it's the fact that they can accelerate in these really, like, it's a Mobius strip. Like, it's like they're moving at you in this sort of obtuse arc. In so many cases that you can't contest it. And it's not just as Axel. Like, you would think, like, well, if you play as Blaze, like, yeah, then it won't be a problem. No, it's still a problem. So, Garnet, she just illustrated my point. She just, more or less in an abstract way, she just walked really fast. So, enemy movement is also so robust that it's almost like they just have, like, analog movement. It's like, well, I want to move slowly. I want to run down the axis. All of that just means that when you're playing this game, it becomes reset prone. That type of design is coercion. Like, it is getting in a part of your brain. Like, we all know that, like, maybe we don't all know. If you don't know. Like, you can make something have an addictive quality. Like, that can tap into, like, the whole stupid tendency that people might have to need to see an outcome. To, like, check the block. To, like, get the achievement. You know, you call it completionism or whatnot. Being coercive is the way I would put it. Because it should underscore, like, the negative quality I think that it has. Like, right here, I'm waiting to get attacked. Because if I try to move, the Garnets, or the Rubies in this case, a Garnet enemy there, they have me in checkmate. Like, if I turned around to go after BT, it means that Garnet's gonna drop kick me. So the target of interest is Garnet. So what BT is doing is running interference. Holy shit, he's Silent Hill. And by doing that, it makes certain decisions come off as dubious for enemies, like certain options they have. Like, why does Diamond need a slap when if you throw anything... If you throw any other type of enemy on the screen, they can enable her to do what she needs to do all the same. And that applies to, like, so many other enemy types. The difficulty is not just like, oh, I picked Mania, and Mania just says unfair, but the rest of the game is fun. Like, how long does anyone? How long do I have to play this game to sort of just be like, yeah, I know what's coming, and I have, like, I have achieved flow or mastery or blah blah blah. You know, and if that doesn't happen, you know, I know that they're shoot 'em ups. Actually, I want to illustrate something that Garcia did there. He stopped because I was attacking. He just stopped and waited. Enemies are really smart. Hit you. Wow, you almost just slid point blank. Almost messed that up. Enemies are too smart. And Garcia is, like, supposed to be the weakest enemy. This is only hard mode. And he would do that. He would do that on easy. Like, if the trigger if the trigger for if you were caught on the wrong end of it, he can do that on modes that are supposedly not like super difficult. Like here, Donovan came into play, and it's like I didn't want to risk getting jabbed. Now, granted, it's like I don't care if I already got a perfect on this stage, like on hard. Unfortunately, my Nvidia card didn't go on with that. But there's so many instances where you're just sort of forced to slam defensive blitz, and you do it so much. I want to go back to what I was saying, like, what is it, 10, 15 minutes ago? The game basically begins to thread you. You become basically slammed by monotony, and you would be like, well, just take a break. I'm like, yes, but you're talking about an entire game where it's like the attraction to the developer is like, oh, well, I want players, like, I heard Shinkenzu saying this shit. We want players to talk about this game for a long time. We want them to be playing it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you must be talking about people that just have an inordinate amount of time to play fucking games all day. You're not talking about, like, I don't know, like, people that work in, like, vulnerable jobs, like essential jobs, grocery stores. You're talking about people that can just sit in front of a computer monitor all day. Which is egregiously stupid to me. Like, it's just like, you've sided with them? So there's so many points where, ultimately, what I think I'm trying to express is the flow of this game is like pumping the brakes. It's like constantly, like right now, I don't want to walk up to green signal because I'm slow, and his slide just comes out super fast. I'm not going to go for these point items. So, I'm not going for these point items to illustrate that the game doesn't break because I have infinites. Like, the prestige of scoring still holds up to not doing infinites, because you have to surrender offense and take a chance against a character that can tech knockdowns, maybe, sometimes not, so it's not even consistent. You have to surrender advantage just to go get some point items. Like, there's still a level of skill involved, so my argument here then is that, well, if you don't want infinites, what are you offering the player? Like, Estelle, like, she damn near checkbaited me just from movement. I didn't know if she was gonna, like, pop me in the face just now. Grand upper. And it missed, because grand upper sucks, but, like, that's a change they gave to Axel. Like, Axel's gonna move farther on grand upper, and I hear he's gonna be slightly faster. But even Blaze is fast. So I think that was a perfect? I don't know. It's funny because that's not, like, did I not get a perfect? I have no idea if that was a perfect. I'll have to go through the VOD. That previous perfect, 5:03, you know, for 5 minutes, 3 seconds, 40,208 points. What did I get here? Like, I guess that, like, that was probably a perfect, but it's not even, like, I actually successfully, in that other recording that I was going to talk over and post, because I hate videos like this. Like, you're talking about a difference of like 1,000 points, and in that one, like, I think I tried to get the score items as well. But to sort of close this off, well, let's pick a character with better speed, like better movement speed. Maybe she'll fare better. And the only thing, like, I really experienced, because I had like entire resets, like I did it as Blaze as well. Like, man, I thought she was dead. So she has better movement speed. It would stand to reason that enemies won't, you know, necessarily maybe backpedal me and like destroy my chain. Nope, that would have been it. Just there, like, the fact that Ruby, I believe it is, she walked down. Punching that barrel only gives you like a minor time extension. Like, so I'm like, of all the changes I've heard, I'm like, none of, like, these character buffs, that's like a mirage. And then again, like, Ruby like moves in that oblong way. It's like Muso Tensei, that sort of crap. I don't think those are gonna necessarily solve like some of the things that would frustrate players. It's just things that I don't think most players are gonna point that out to you. Because what they're seeing is like Donovan's jab. But Donovan's jab is only 7 frames. Where you're likely getting hit is how quickly enemies will close the gap. That's where most players are like getting quote-unquote sucker punched, because you don't even have time to wait to see if Donovan is gonna like be in place or not. Enemy movement is just too good. Like, it controls the pace of the game to a fault. So I hear people just going like, well, is Estelle 2 gonna be changed? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm like, that's not the problem. I'm like, at some point, even on the normal difficulties, this is just hard mode. This is just hard mode. This should be cake for me, right? I'm the psychopath that... I'm the crazy guy that did, like, Chinatown on, like, I tried to super there. I'm the psychopath that did Chinatown on Mania perfectly with Axel. Like, this should be easy. But I run into the same problems, like there. Like, I did a jump kick and I mashed super, and I guess it's more important that Barney be able to grab me. Like, if I let it Garnet, and this would probably pertain more to Mania, but it could happen here. Let me see if I can do this. I don't want to jump her with that. Not grabbing her. I need to kill all these guys. Can't even experiment, and it typically only happens on okay, it was the other one. Alright. I'm gonna dodge this drop kick. And what I happen to have happen in Mania is, like, I've let enemies, like, whiff moves in front of my face like that, and they'll just slap me. Evidently, that's only a Mania thing. They'll land and slap you. But that, like, it should be, like, what you're seeing here, it should be like that. Like, even in Mania. Because that's a supposed fighting game concept or whatever. Like, if you say that, well, like, you'll hear this a lot. Mania in Streets of Rage 2 or all the Streets of Rage games is unfair. Well, technically, here's those contradictions again. All of those games had pixel art. So, evidently, we have the ability to pick and choose, like, what elements of the past game make it into the new game. So you're telling me that, you know, an artistic decision like pixel art, no. But, basically, here's the concept. Coercing the player into resets or whatever, we gotta keep that. That's real good, real exciting, real deep. Like, that's what a good scoring system be. You know, to take one from Zozek. Make the player reset. Another thing I did want to point out is that if enemies knock themselves into pits, like, you don't actually get points from them. Which kind of sucks. So I'm still mostly running into the same problems as, like, these other characters. There's other stuff that I haven't even pointed out, like the weapons. If you can't cancel the weapon on hit into a defensive blitz. Now, why is that important? You would say that, well, just throw the weapon. You get sandwiched in this game. Suplex him. Oh, by the way, didn't I just have a video where, like, Max suplexes somebody and, like, they don't fall into the pit? Now, granted, I know why it doesn't happen with Blaze, because hers is considered hers isn't really considered a hard knockdown. I jumped too early there, so that was my fault. But, hers isn't considered a hard knockdown, but I'm like, you're throwing in all these features. If you're not going to test them, like if you're not just going to look at them and be like, does this hold up to scrutiny? How do you invoke balance? Like, how is it that, like, the term balance gets invoked when evidently there are things where whoever designed this freaking game is like, fuck it. Video. I don't want to get into, like, every single thing I think is an issue with the game. Like, I think throw range doesn't that doesn't fall into the purview of buffs. That's like a universal system problem. You can literally stand in an enemy and, like, not grab them. So it makes confirming throws, which are already bad, it makes confirming throws actually a hazard. Throw that, because that's almost broken. So, if there's anything you want to take away from this video, you could probably just call it complaining. I don't care. That's what it is. I'm just not, like, I saw someone, like, compare me to Antho Pants, and I'm like, I don't care about it. I really actually don't care about Streets of Rage 2. I like Streets of Rage 1, like, a lot. And I'm bad at that game in terms of finishing it. What really impressed me was I saw a TAS speedrun of it, and most of the game is, like, super fun. See if I can do this. There we go. This guy's shield's finally break. I need to kick these morons away from there. Barney, there's your taser. Barney, it's your taser. What are you doing? Let's have taser. Yeah, like I would have to do a video on that, like, manipulation, like AI manipulation. Exploits like that are great. But I love that you can actually do that to Barneys. Like, I feel like if there's anything this game is lacking, I don't know why I came in here to fight Zamza. This is a crapshoot. But here we go. Infinite. So Zamza, like, look, the Infinite is busted, it's so bad. I'm like, I had to surrender agency, and if I tried to fight Zamza in neutral, I would lose. And I'm, like, the point I was trying to make, like, the reason I'm even playing Blaze right now, is that, you know, you would think, well, Blaze is faster than Axel. No. From ship to stern, like, enemies can outflank you. Like, from the lowest level of enemy to the highest level of enemy, they typically have something about them where your movement speed is trivialized, because some dork was like, well, I want you to see my hard work or something. Like, here I would... Wow. Woo. That used to count against you, like, if you tech the throw. It's not a perfect anymore. Galaxy Brain. In the thick of it. You know what? I don't want to deal with this right now. While they're grouped. So, I don't know. I'll probably stop even if I don't get the perfect here. I'm not going to try to... If there's anything you take away from this video, Infinites don't make you score higher. It's something petty where it's like, oh, well, did you see all the boss attacks? I'm like, we're talking about the game. Like, if you're going to be like, well, story is story. Enemy behavior is enemy behavior. What are the rules and objectives of your game? Like, if I still have to surrender a star here, if I try to go for it, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try to get those items in the upper right-hand corner versus a step. And I will use my super to safely ensure that I get a perfect. Like, with the maximum amount of life score possible. You're still surrendering some sort of point. Like, you're still surrendering, like, optimal score. And I may get hit by fucking Barneys of all things. The items bounce. Like, by doing this super, I'm not gonna be able to, I'm gonna land in front of these items, and I can't pick them up. So what broke? Like the fact that I didn't attack the bosses, like where's the saw all of bosses sequence? Like saw every phase of the boss point bonus. It doesn't fucking exist. Like what did infinites break in this fight? And then you would want to argue like, well, it's too easy. It's too easy and hard are properties of something. What I'm talking about is choreography and flow, like game flow. And then ultimately how that affects like how the game unfolds. Hard, easy, it's not easy to do what I just did. It's like you would think that like, well, doing the infinite there just won me the game. No, it didn't. So I wanted to just put out this video. We're coming up on 46 minutes. I want to show you that whatever you're seeing about this balance patch from the developer, if you're in a forum thread talking about this stupid crap instead of like Black Lives Matter because like you're not, you're fucking up like I am. If you're not involved in politics, you are talking about something stupid, but not only is it stupid, like we're still bad at it. Like people can't look at something like this and put it into context. They're like, well, the solution to the Garnets is just a neutral jump. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is that like Garnet just outmaneuvers you. Like even like Blaze, like if that Garnet moves down, I have to hold that. So then the characters that I do have a movement advantage over, like she covers for them. Like it's like multiplayer, and that's fine. But then why should those enemies, like why should every single variant of them like outmaneuver me? Why can't Garcia's, like Galcia's, if you want to call it that, this the level 1 standard variant? Why can't they just be bad at something? So I'm good at this game, but if you feel frustrated by Streets of Rage 4, if you feel that it's too difficult, if you feel that there's something up with it, yeah, I agree with you. Because actually I think that because you can say it's too difficult, what is that a sign of? That is a sign of bad player movement. That is a sign of bad choreography and player behavior. God Hand doesn't really have this problem, because God Hand has like great manipulation, so that's one game. You can go to Alien vs Predator. You can go look up a channel called Replay Burners. What makes those games fun to go to is you can be good at them. You can memorize them all the way through. Things are mostly consistent. If there's a change up, you're not being rated on a chain that makes zero sense as a wager. Like if we're playing games or gambling. You come to Streets of Rage 4, what I like most about this game, it is so fun as a multiplayer game. And why? Because by no decision of the designer, I would argue, you don't have to put up with any of this crap. Someone's there to cover you. So the fact that like all these enemies can outflank you, I got your back. So that is incidental to any designer vision, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I do not care if I don't see the movement or attack patterns of enemies that aren't just unfair, but it's not interesting. It's like I just stand still, wait for you to whiff a move, boss, and then I take my turn, and then I do it again. Well, what's a game that's not like that? Devil May Cry 1. You can interact with enemies in such a way where there's actual offensive concepts, like where the player can not just wait to take a turn by dodging and moving out of the way, but once you get Ifrit, or you can fight Nilo Angelo #1. There's a video on my channel where it's just swordplay. I think that you can look it up. It's called swordplay. You can actually you can literally get into a sword fight with that character. That makes Devil May Cry 1, as an aside, the only Devil May Cry game where there's sword fighting, and it's not in a cutscene. And they never really expanded on that. Like, those are, like, you can see these things. Like, even if you're a no talent, like, you know that saying, those who can't do teach, or blah, blah, blah? That's me. Not a game designer. Just wasted my life, like, playing a lot of this, but I want you to know, I think that this game is too hard, and what it being too hard, and again, what that is evidence of is poor choreography and bad wagers, just bad design on a level of, like, flow. You literally just get checkmated by enemies control the flow of the game. So how do you say that it was like the player's fault in a lot of instances, that their chain dropped? It's literally just like, well, you got unlucky. Leave luck for like the extreme stuff. Like I have some speedrunning records. Like I have the best scores or times in Ninja Warriors once again. I have some, like, I damn near own the leaderboard in Wild Guns Reloaded. None of that matters. That doesn't make me smarter or better than you. Like, there are people that have made these observations and they didn't do anything. They didn't live the Streets of Rage 4 lifestyle. They didn't get it perfect on Chinatown. But if anyone ever tells you, if you're like, you have a problem like me, if you feel the same way, I'm good as hell at this game, you're right. So don't let anyone be like, well, the dodge the Garcia is just blah, blah, blah. No. That's not the problem. So I just wanted to put this out. This is what getting a perfect looks like. On a lower difficulty, you're still resetting. And this is like, add 80 minutes to what you just saw here, because it took me about 40 minutes each, like the first time on hard with Axel and Blaze, even though I have a familiarity with this game. So that's all I wanted to do. I actually don't think this game is the worst game I've ever played, but it doesn't make sense that it's bad in some of the ways that it is. The saving grace is, though, if you've played this with another person, and then even that can get messed up, because like if you pick a harder difficulty, you'll probably die on like stage 5 in the triple super armor room. Even though it's fun with another person, the super armor, the enemy movement, the last 4 levels of this game, which I will not try to get perfects on, I just, like, if you were waiting for those, it's not coming. Like, you can already hear, if I sound angry, yeah, I am. But that's okay. Like, reel it down, cool, like, bring it in. If you play those stages for them, for what they are, ask yourself, like, how many resets you would see. It's just reset prone. But I don't... The point is that it's not bad because it's perfect. Apply that to a regular-ass person. I see so many people just get wrecked. Even though I could tell them, like, a solution to, like, some of these attacks and whatnot. It doesn't matter. The game has a lot of parity. There was, like, one thing where I'm like, well, maybe that, like, Garnet actually whiffs a drop kick. I'm like, God, thank God. But you go to Mania and, like, alright, well, you called it unfair, but the problem is that some of these problems persist even on lower difficulties, like getting outmaneuvered. A whiff isn't a whiff. The other thing, the appeal, the issue with playing multiplayer is also just that if you want to have more stuff on screen to hit, if you kind of want to prolong the experience or like the fun part of it, which is hitting stuff, typically you want it to happen in the first 2/3 of the game where enemies don't just like surrender any and all pretense of it being a beat 'em up before the game turns into like a platformer in the like the third room before the last 2 bosses, or the penultimate normal enemy room, which is just a room full of fat dudes with super armor. Before you get to like Z that catches weapons, where basically you don't get to do anything you learned because Streets of Rage 4 is like no one should be good at anything ever. Before you get to the part of the game where girls throw objects in front of you, like at your feet. So they throw them from off screen, which is like Platinum Games even said, we don't let things happen off camera like that. Fairness. But fairness is about choreography. They want the player to like express something visually. You can't do that if you're getting hit in the back of the head. But this game violates that. And it's not like it's a rule, it's just a decision, and that decision is bad. Most players in multiplayer are picking a harder difficulty because it puts more enemies on screen, but then you really ramp up the difficulty of the last 4 levels and you probably die. Like, hell, when you get to Chinatown, that can be fatal, like if you're not great, even in normal and hard mode. And before anyone says anything, it's like, yes, I'm aware that if you die, like if we say they're not playing arcade, like say you're playing like story mode, let's delete. No, let's play this. The last thing I have to show, actual last thing. Let's just die. Like say they die, and then you pick one of the buffs or whatever, you just lose score. Man, it's gonna take forever. I have to kill myself. This is where most enemy attack power comes from. It's not the jab, it's the wager of whether the player will put themselves out of position. Which is funny because, like, that's about the only agency you have, like, to kill yourself. The assist. Add 3 lives, 2 stars, score divided by 10. This is supposed to help the player that's not skilled, which I think is really convenient. But why just this, you know? And Devil May Cry does it. It's not like these two beat 'em ups, one being in the stylish action genre. They're both beat 'em ups, by the way. Like, I saw someone on Steam try to be like, Devil May Cry is not a beat 'em up. What are you doing? God. Even modeled on these games. Like, I think that even if you really wanted to help, like, a player, like, it's like you give them, like, I would have added an option where not only do you get more lives, but, like, you take less damage. You dynamically, like, I mean, that was the point of, like, easy up to Mania, but the difficulty is bad. It doesn't scale. And then look at these fighting tips. Like, they show you what all your buttons do. Specials drain health, hit enemies to restore it, blah, blah, blah. Some moves are invincible. Take advantage of this. Note how jump isn't on there. So they're like, grab throw. Grab throw is invincible. They don't say which throw it is. Like, yeah. If you feel this game is unfair, if you feel it's too hard, then some paragon of design. But no game is perfect. I think the only thing I'm ever upset about is just, like, people acting like they know something, like, just, like, the pseudo-expertise. And then you just try to checkmate somebody. Well, I'm like, I'm not the IGN guy that played God Hand. And even then, the joke behind that dude was that, like, he actually had to do, like, game criticism when IGN is just there to, like, promote games. It's essentially just, like, marketing. It's a commercial. But he got so upset, it's like he just be like, well, this game is bad. And then you just find out that he doesn't know what he doesn't know the genre enough, or blah, blah, blah. But even then, I actually think it's understandable you would get frustrated, because God Hand has, like, similar issues about explaining itself. But I think that God Hand actually has a higher artistic point, because it makes fun of you for being good. Like, it actually puts, one of the challenges in that game is to put a loser sign. Like, we're almost to an hour, already gone past the point where I said I'd stop. But Streets of Rage 4 isn't God Hand. It doesn't, I don't care about, like, Tumblr, McFry Kid, like, Cherry, like, I'm just here for the gameplay. It isn't necessarily amazing. I didn't buy this game either. A friend got it for me. And I like pushing games. Like, it's like, well, why would you do this to yourself? I'm an idiot. I like video games. I like design. I like talking about them. But if you feel frustrated by this game, it's okay. I think that in most freaking cases, it's something that you didn't have a chance to know anyway. My friend had to tell me about the neutral jump invincible. So I was doing what everyone else was doing. Mash, defensive, blitz, die, walk up, but you're too slow. And I started with Blaze. I didn't start with Axel. I picked Axel because some pretentious nerd was like, actually, Axel is good. He's a defensive character. Like, that already sounds dicey. You're telling me you're a defensive character in a game with a stage-long combo chain, which means that it's an offensive game. You already made a bad character, so why is he bad? Technically, if you wanted to justify Axel being slow but defensive, you would have made, like, all of his specials except maybe, like, Dragon Roll, like the air special. You would have made them safe as hell. You made them good as hell, but no mobility for it. He's just a tank. Like, he's like the karate guy that stands his ground and just beats the hell out of you. But evidently that didn't happen. If you feel this game is too hard, I agree with you. That's enough talking. Thank you for watching my videos. Someone asked me, like, for my thoughts. I'm like, I've been meaning to do this. It's not even good. This is a stupid type of YouTube video where the guy, like, sits in front of the camera. I might as well have a camera on my face and, like, just point and laugh at myself. So I'll try to put out something more edited. I want to talk about concepts with less rambling, easier to follow, visuals, all that stuff. But I don't actually get paid for this. I don't, God, I'm poor as hell. And I've dealt with a lot of health problems, but we're all dealing with stuff. Stay safe out there. Black Lives Matter, you must, like, etc. All right, I'll see you.